So, you've probably heard the name Fani Willis, right? As the district attorney for Fulton County, Georgia, she's right at the center of one of the biggest legal cases in the country. But what if the story you see on the national news is just the tip of the iceberg of a much bigger, much more complicated story back home? I mean, look at this quote from the Black Agenda report. It paints a pretty heroic picture, doesn't it? But here's the thing. The source actually uses this exact description to set up a huge contrast with a completely different part of her career, one that started long before most of us ever heard her name. So what really happens when we peel back the layers of those national headlines? Well, you find a history right there in Atlanta that makes everything a lot more complex. It reveals a tough, controversial, and honestly a deeply debated record. So let's get into it. Okay, so let's dive in. We're going to rewind the clock to 2015. We're talking about a case that really helped define Fani Willis's career as a prosecutor, and it's a case that people in Atlanta are still arguing about to this day. This was the Atlanta Public Schools cheating scandal. Just try to imagine the scene. There was this immense pressure from the No Child Left Behind Act, which basically punished schools for low test scores. So educators were accused of going in and changing student answers. And this quote from Shawnee Robinson, one of the accused teachers, it just cuts right to the bone of the defense's argument. They felt like they were being scapegoated for a system that was just designed to fail them. So how in the world did then Assistant DA Fani Willis prosecute a group of school teachers? Well, she used this, the RICO Act. Yeah, a super powerful law that was literally designed to take down the mob. Using that against educators, it was unusual, and a lot of people would say a very aggressive strategy. And this right here, this lays out the two sides that just could not see eye to eye. On one side, you have Willis arguing she was being a champion for the kids, the people that did not have a voice. And on the other, the defense saying, no, this is about criminalizing black educators who were trapped in an impossible situation. So after a really grueling 8-month trial, the verdict came down, and it came down hard. 11 of the 12 educators were convicted. Some were even sentenced to prison time. In this case, it really cemented Willis's reputation as a prosecutor you did not want to mess with, but it also left some really deep scars in parts of the Atlanta community. Okay, now let's fast forward a bit and see how this all connects to what's happening today. Because to really get a handle on the power of a RICO indictment from Fani Willis's office, we kind of need to see how it works in the real world, right now. So check this out. This is the actual cover page of a plea agreement for a defendant in that high-profile YSL case. This isn't some law school textbook example. This document shows us exactly what you're up against when you're facing a RICO charge from her office. So what do you have to do just to get a deal? Well, you have to formally, on the record, admit that YSL is a criminal gang, that you were a founder, that you committed specific crimes. These aren't just things the prosecution is saying anymore. They become established, undeniable facts that they can use. And this is where the incredible pressure of a RICO plea becomes crystal clear. Of course, the defendant has to promise to testify against everyone else. But look at this other part. They also have to agree that they can't say anyone else is innocent. Think about that. You are legally forbidden from trying to help your co-defendants. It is an incredibly powerful way to flip witnesses. Now you can imagine, prosecuting these huge, multi-defendant RICO cases, it takes a ton of time and a ton of resources. And that puts a massive, massive strain on the entire justice system, especially the county jail, which has to house all these defendants, sometimes for years before they even see a trial. And hey, don't just take my word for it. This quote is from Fulton County's own official study. They're the ones calling their own jail obsolete, overcrowded, deteriorated, and unsafe. They're basically admitting it's in a state of dangerous collapse. So, what's the solution they're proposing? A brand new jail. And the price tag? A staggering $1.7 billion. That's the cost of this crisis. And the scale of what they want to build it's huge. The plan calls for over 4,400 beds. That's the sheer number of people the county feels it needs to keep locked up. Now, this is really important. Let's look at who is actually inside. This isn't just a bunch of general population cells. A third of the entire planned facility, over 1,400 beds, is specifically for inmates with mental health needs. What that tells you is that the jail has become one of the largest mental and physical healthcare providers in the entire region. And here it is. This is the vision the county is selling for that $1.7 billion. A modern, almost campus-like facility that's designed for, quote, better outcomes. It's a shocking contrast to the reality of the current jail, but it really just highlights the enormous and costly challenge they're facing. So let's take a step back and try to connect all these different threads. We've talked about a prosecutor, a very powerful legal tool, and a system that is stretched to its absolute breaking point. So how does it all fit together? Okay, so let's just quickly recap. You've got a prosecutor who is famous for her aggressive use of the RICO Act. You have that legal tool itself, which creates these incredibly complex cases that put enormous pressure on people and on county resources. And then you have the direct result, a jail system that's in total crisis, staring down $1 billion bill just to fix itself. And all of this, it brings us to one final, really crucial question. We've seen how a prosecutor's choices, the laws they decide to use, and the actual physical infrastructure that has to bear the weight of those choices are all tangled up together. And it just leaves you wondering, when a system is strained this badly, who is ultimately responsible for what justice actually looks like?